I'm very happy to give these introductory words to introduce to you very briefly what Interact is and why we're here. It's a somewhat unusual organization or consortium that we're doing here. It's a network of top universities who want to collaborate and prepare for a globalized future. Universities are, by their definition and by their very nature, typically local, and they're typically regional. They get funded by regional money. They are located at a regional area, and they teach local students, traditionally. Now, the world is changing. We have spent the afternoon discussing how globalization and technologies really affect the way we teach and the way universities will operate in the future. Interact is a network of universities, so it's not export of education, it's universities that consider themselves top in the world, in different regions of the world, who collaborate and work together to do student exchanges, to do joint research projects, to have mutual faculty exchange, to do summer schools, to do distinguished lectures, and thereby really have a very active exchange between the best of the world in the major regions of the world. So as you see, our panel that we have brought together are representatives. It's the first time we have such a lucky constellation of getting the presidents of such top universities to come together in one place and actually discuss what this future would look like. So we have, of course, Carnegie Mellon University and University of Southern California represented, Karlsruhe Institute of Technology, Italian Institute of Technology, Waseda University in Japan, NICT in Japan, and Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. You see the three main parts of the world represented and discussing here this afternoon this future. We have also external members who will act as respondents, who are all very illustrious and famous people from industry and academia. Panasonic represented, Nokia Research Center, Deutsche Telekom, Stanford University, and ex-Amazon, chief scientist from Amazon. I will not moderate. I wanted to just briefly introduce you why we're here, what Interact is, what we're trying to do, and what we were trying to do this afternoon. And we had a very exciting discussion, which we will expand on in this panel this evening. Ed Frank is a good friend of mine, and it turns out we studied both at Carnegie Mellon University, got our PhDs more or less the same time. Our paths then went in all kinds of wild, different directions, but here we are together again. Ed is vice president at Apple. He obviously has a very distinguished career in industry, and he also serves on the board of trustees of Carnegie Mellon. He will be moderating this panel.
So here's what we're going to do tonight. In the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to go through a series of questions that I'm going to ask of various distinguished members of the panel here. And hopefully we'll get some time for questions from the audience, and we'll see how this goes. So the first question to the university presidents is, what are your current efforts to prepare for globalization? I'll let Dr. Cohen answer, because I know I just was at a board meeting, and I know he knows the answer to this.
That's right. I can't keep it to 45 minutes, though.
Okay. Well,
I'll be very brief. Carnegie Mellon in the last decade, I'm president of Carnegie Mellon University. Carnegie Mellon in the last decade has become much more global than it ever was before. We are striving to become a global university, even though we don't know what that is. But when we get there, I guess we'll discover it. We're so committed to this for two reasons. One is the world into which our current students will graduate is already very highly connected. It's a global economy. They have to know how to work across cultures and be comfortable moving from one culture to another. Therefore, we think our university should be global in its composition and in what it does. Second of all, we believe that for the future of Carnegie Mellon University, we need to be where the growth in economies and influence is taking place. So we have acted on those two things. Today, 30% of our students in Pittsburgh are international students, foreign passport carrying. That's among the highest percentages of any university in America. The content of what they learn is much more global than it ever was before by design. On the second part of this, second reason we're so committed to becoming global, we now have campuses here. We think of this as our first international campus.
Careful.
You can interpret that any way you want. Here in Doha, Qatar, in the Middle East, and in Adelaide, Australia, with major programs but not campuses in Portugal, Taiwan, Korea, Singapore, and we're working on Rwanda and India. Watch this space. That's what we're doing to deal with globalization.
So, Dr. Wu, you've been both in the U.S. and in Hong Kong. How about your efforts at globalization?
I think the main effort at globalization has been to found a university over in Hong Kong. We are less than 20 years old, about 18 years, and rank extremely highly, I think, in all the fields that we actually cover, which are science, technology, and business primarily. All of the faculty, 90% of the faculty came from North America. That's 500 faculty, about 55% from the top 20 universities. If we include Oxford and Cambridge as North America. It is a 100% English language university in a region which is obviously overwhelmingly Chinese speaking. The internationalization efforts on our student body have exploded. We have not only 12% of the undergraduate students coming from the mainland of China, but we have also an exploding body of European and American students, not just exchange, but full-time now. We have been very welcoming of programs such as Interact and other international collaborations. I see some faces here. And I believe that this is the healthiest way to go forward in terms of globalization. We are playing a unique role in Greater China insofar as we are a very American university. We are the only very American university in the region, and yet we have very, very strong ties to our colleagues in both the mainland of China as well as, of course, our roots in the West. And we hope that through programs such as Interact, we'll be able to continue playing that sort of a bridge, which will lower the barriers across the entire globe.
Thank you. Dr. Sandini, how about a European perspective?
Yes, well, I'm from the Italian Institute of Technology. I'm not a president, by the way. I'm just representing the president.
We'll make you a president. We'll make you a president for tonight. So.
Yes, thanks a lot. So, I mean, what we are doing, I mean, IITs are relatively young institutions. So what we did at the start, IIT is just 5 years old. What we did at the start, we tried to get a sort of a cultural globalization in the sense of establishing an institute which is strongly multidisciplinary. It is working on humanoid technologies, but it is also working on neuroscience and material science and other aspects. So we are prepared for the change of, or we are trying to prepare ourselves for the changes that we see in front of us in terms of science, in terms of research, which is going to is putting humans in the center of the research arena more than in the past. So this was a sort of a general attempt to to globalize what we are doing, and more specifically, what we are investing a lot is on research tools which can be shared by as many people, as many researchers or students as possible. Working with robots, it is really very hard to have international groups working together because the platforms are different. So we are really investing a lot on a project working on open software and open hardware. Our was the first, the ICAB project that we have was the first open robotics project, and is now involving more than 20 institutions in Europe and one in the United States. So in order to prepare for globalization, you need to be prepared to have an open mind in terms of community, scientific community, and also to have open tools for scientific research. Thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Shirai, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
Yes. Also, in the case of Waseda, the most important issue is the globalization. We have now about 4,000 foreign students in campus. That leads only to about 10%, not 30%. But we are sending our students to outside. Maybe this year 1,000. That's maybe half of the students, 500, maybe staying in the United States. Around here in California, several hundred, I think. Then student exchange and the faculty exchange, that's a very important one. And the second, maybe we must challenge with our research university should cooperate to the more global fundamental issues of the sustainability or survivability or like that. And that's collaboration is important and necessary. And in that sense, the kind of this collaboration in the field of robotics and language processing, maybe they involve the cultural difference problems. We are making some answer we can provide. And then the Interact project is very much interesting and important, we think.
Thank you. So, Dr. Hall, what you need to know is my younger daughter went to USC, and on the other hand, I was an undergrad at Stanford, and I was very happy to see us beat you in football. So, given all of that, perhaps you want to talk about globalization.
Yeah. So, I actually grew up in Palo Alto, so I guess I'm bi-state.
There you go.
Like you as well. And I was born in California, and being born here and lived here all my life, almost all my life, I've seen a lot of change. And during that period, this state really has become like a nation onto its own, and it's internationalism. California is a place that has been a magnet for the best and the brightest from around the world. They come here because of the innovation. They come here because of the weather, too. But this is really a vibrant place to be. At USC, we have more international students than any other university in the country, with more than 7,000 students. And I like to believe they come here because of the great university and the experience they have there, and I think that is part of it, but it's also the culture we offer here in this state, where a student can come from India, China, Indonesia, almost any country in the world. We have 125 countries represented at the university, and really feel at home both within their own culture and within a blending of cultures. Our university strategy is partly on creating that home for international students from around the world. It's also based on giving experiences for our own students to travel elsewhere, so that most of our undergraduates, many of our graduate students will have an experience abroad to experience the cultures. And then also from a research perspective, creating selective collaborations, particularly in the Pacific Rim countries, focused on Asia, South America, Central America, forming the relationships so that our faculty can work with those at other universities, or perhaps work on projects in other countries, such as China, where we're looking at, say, environmental impacts on health. Those environmental impacts being much greater than they are here in California, pollution being even that much worse. And also the health behavior effects of things like smoking around the world. So we learn a lot from other countries, and we hope that they learn from us by coming here.
Thank you. Dr. Hilter, what's the German perspective on this?
Yeah, my university has always been a very international university already from the beginning. So we still have 25% of foreign students already now for 100 years or more. But the question I understand a little bit differently. Internationalization or globalization, I think these are two different shoes. And internationalization is fine. You're open for people from the rest of the world to come to your place. But how do you prepare your students, your faculty for the new challenges of the globalization? That's a little bit different. And for this purpose, we have created in Karlsruhe a House of Competence. This means to promote social competences and other things for students before they go abroad, before they go to industry, that they are prepared, that the world is different than at home. Even if they meet and have good friends from the international community of the students, going to a different country is a different event in your life. And what's very important is that we have a very, very good language school to prepare those students in very, very many languages. And I think this is very, very important. Before you go into a different country, you have to learn this language. And I think English is fine, but English is for me something like a tool. And if you go to a different country, which is not America or Britain or Australia, then you should also learn these basics of this language. And I think globalization has something to do with learning the difference of the cultures, and very, very early. And that's a purpose at my university, and that's what we understand to prepare for globalization.
Thank you. And finally, Dr. Namie.
My name is Kazuma and I'm from NICT. NICT means the National Institute of Information and Communication Technologies. Our budget comes from Japanese government, but we are very active to the globalization. For example, NICT has a large number of the, joint research projects under MOU, Memory of Understanding. Only in the last single year, we concluded 20 MOUs with partners in Finland, Hungary, Thailand, the United States, and so on. The purpose of the MOU is to establish and maintain the mutually beneficial partnership through exchange information in our research fields, exchanging researchers, and organizing workshop and symposium. So this is one example, but we want to open to come the visitors, the researchers in our laboratories, and also we want to visit the various kinds of research academia and institute. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, so what we just heard, I think, is that between universities getting students from all over the world, something that's been increasing quite a bit, to making sure that students are versed in cultures and languages of different parts of the world, to universities going out and teaching in far-flung places, Africa and elsewhere, that the universities are definitely in a global community, and of course they're also in a technical community as well, lots of technology. In fact, not to steal his thunder, but Dr. Wu and I were talking before the meeting about how none of his students will actually talk to him anymore, but they're happy to text him questions. So the question I have, and I think I'd like you to focus on this in the spirit of the New York Times article recently that talked about how students go to classes, but they do it from their dorm room on their computer. And the question is ultimately, how will technology change the mission of a research university, both in terms of how you teach, but also in terms of what you teach? And I'll let whoever feels motivated to start. Please, Dr. Hilter.
Yeah, let me start. If you take the question by the words, you say how the mission will change, I would say the mission won't change at all. The mission is education, research, and innovation, and this will not change. whatever IT and other facilities will open. So you may adapt your teaching, you may adapt your research, you may use these opportunities for have better research, better education, and better innovation, but the mission will not change. However, you will use these facilities to become better and more competitive.
Thank you.
So I agree that the mission of the university is not going to change, and that we do need to serve society. We need to create knowledge and transfer that knowledge. But there is a tension within universities that one thing we do within universities is extraordinarily conservative, that we protect traditions and we have rituals and so on. And then the other side is when we do our research, we try to be extraordinarily innovative. Many aspects of our university remain quite conservative, and sometimes the conservative side of the university inhibits the innovation. And part of that is the way we do research. The question had to do with education, but the way we do research is driven by a set of rules that were created decades ago and haven't really changed much in terms of how we reward, acknowledge accomplishments, typically rewarding acknowledged accomplishments at an individual level and based on products that are maybe not the best ways to disseminate our research, that we created our rules based on printed publications when that's maybe not the dominant way that we innovate today. So universities need to adapt so that they do remain at the forefront. And we're all working on it, but we need to do more.
Jerry? I can call Jerry by his first name because we've met before.
Well, and you can too. This is a topic, in fact, that we spent much of the afternoon discussing. And it's a very interesting and important one, and obviously very timely. At Carnegie Mellon, this is an area of very active research, where we brought together cognitive scientists with computer scientists, human-computer interaction experts, designers, and learning scientists to create what I believe to be, so far, the best online, full-course, interactive learning environments. I liked what the speaker said. He's absolutely right that the big promise here of technology in this respect is to make education much more interactive, a real learning environment. I believe that, as I've told my colleagues earlier today, that the combination of these technologies, which are still rather primitive and will become much more powerful, with the forces in society that universities are facing, we will see some very substantial changes in the way we do things. I agree with President Hilter that our mission, I believe, will stay the same. It's the way we do things. Those forces in society I'm talking about, especially in America, are a great concern about the cost of higher education and therefore the need for productivity improvements. Great concern about quality of education. That is, are students really learning what we claim that they're learning? I don't think it's an issue for Carnegie Mellon or USC, but it is at other universities. And thirdly, access to education. Take those three things and add to them the kinds of technologies that are now emerging, and you've got a combination that I think that will result in very significant change. Finally, I should say, as the New York Times article indicated that you referred to, Ed, it has already changed. It's routine now for universities, especially large universities, to be using these online technologies. They're not very good yet, because they're not using the kinds of things that we've developed, but they will be. And finally, the largest university in America is the University of Phoenix, a for-profit company with more than 200,000 students, and it's largely an online university. So the future is here. This is not hypothetical. It's not in the future. It's here. And as one of our colleagues put it today, I think it was Alex who said, when you're uncertain about the future, the best thing you do is invent it. It's up to us to really seize it and make the most use of it.
Dr. Wu.
So I'd like to make the theme about tech that enhances interaction, since this is interact in education, rather than isolation. But let me give you a couple of concrete examples of the sort of thing that I'm talking about. And many of you may have seen this New York Times, I think, article last week about students who no longer bother attending lectures because they can just watch it in the dorm. But the downsides of that and the regrets that students who do that eventually have. I think it's important to remember that one of the really important functions of a university as a knowledge management organization is the unintended water cooler effect types of things. I mean, universities, classes force very different students who don't like each other or their mutual opinions to have to be together. And that is actually something which is important. And the internet in general, our IT, has actually enabled people to avoid those people. You know, in KM terms, it's driven a rapid acceleration toward isolated communities of practice that share interests and biases and opinions at the expense of having to deal with those who don't share that. It has created a fragmentation, a sort of polarization, a sort of isolation of these communities, and that is a role that I think we on the information technology side can actually actively look at overcoming. How can we build technologies that have the opposite effect? You know, in teaching, in lecturing in the classrooms, I've tried an experiment the last couple of semesters. I don't use PowerPoint, and I don't give them notes. And they scream and they complain, but like most of us when we were young, it forces them to actually take notes, which has been proven to be a very good way to make people actually think about what they're hearing and internalize it. And then what happens? Have you tried this? Have any of you tried this? What happens when you do this to the students? That's what happens. The vicious technology. So now we have to find a way to defeat that. In Asia, we're confronting some particular unique problems there. Asian students really don't like to answer questions. They don't like to speak in class. They hate it with a passion to the extent that they lobby their classmates from overseas to not answer so many of the professor's questions because that will just encourage him to ask more questions. On the other hand, as mentioned earlier, they love instant messaging, they love texting, they love blogs, and so I now have them in class with their laptops and stuff doing live blogging in class so that they will ask questions, just not verbally. But these are things that we can use technology, we can embrace it and find a way to pervert it to our own interests of increasing the interaction instead of isolating them. In Hong Kong, especially, we have problems with language comprehension. A lot of our students have less than stellar English comprehension abilities. And yet all of the lectures are in English. They have to be. We have a lot of international students. So we're looking also at technologies that would enhance that, translation and so forth.
Thank you. Dr. Shirai.
Recently, students to enter the university to receive the higher education, the rate is dramatically increasing in Europe. And maybe it is 10 years or so. And also, then we should reduce the cost problem. But the traditional research university way is a very costly education system we have. Then there is many contradiction, and also some faculty members, most of faculty members don't like to use such kinds of technology introduce. But I think there is some way to reduce the cost. We should use the technology issue. For example, if we consider some small region society, regional society, we should make some subtle system of the educational system. We can probably reduce the cost and probably useful for the social training, like that. that is, we should abandon the one-to-one and the face-to-face classical way of teaching that way. I think so.
Thanks.
Dr. Sedini?
Yes. So, I mean, I agree that the mission of the university is probably not changing very much. On the other hand, disciplines are evolving faster than a few years ago, and also curricula are evolving faster, or should be evolving faster than a few years ago. So I think that where technology could help is probably, to remove, let's say, to reduce direct interactions for aspects of teaching which do not really require direct interaction, and concentrate the work that we do with the students only to the aspects which are changing so fast, or that are changing one day after the other, so that we teach something which is up to date, and this, I think, is where technology could really help to try to for us, for the teachers, to invest our time on topics which are not established, leaving the topics which are already discussed and well established to more, technologically based tools.
Okay, and one last comment, Dr. Khatib.
Yes. Well, actually, I was going to give the example of haptics, how haptics is changing the way, in fact, we interact with the physical world in the classroom, in research, as one of the example of those new emerging technologies, robotics, AI, and other fields are bringing. So we used to just look at the screen to see the results. Now we can interact, and we can, in fact, affect the behavior of what we are simulating. This is, in fact, one little example of many of the development that are enhancing the experience of learning, and in fact bringing new dimensions to that experience. I just wanted to mention another point in relation to technology and research and education, and that is the connection with industry. That is, well, probably Stanford has a history. I mean, we are here in the Silicon Valley, and probably a large part of the reason we have the Silicon Valley is Berkeley and Stanford and the universities were around here that really brought most of the seats for many of those companies. Google guys were students in our lab. By the way, I'm Usama Khatib in the AI lab at Stanford in computer science. And I'm also a president of the International Foundation of Robotic Research, so my research and work is mostly in robotics. But in the transfer of technology, there is a lot of dynamic that is taking place where, in fact, that interaction that is taking place with the industry is guiding the ways some of the research is promoted, is pushed, is developed. And we see a lot of examples of that in the medical community, where a lot of the research that came out of robotics and went into medical robotics was supported and sponsored and pushed somehow by the industry. So affiliate programs, I've been the director of the affiliate program of Stanford Computer Science Department. where we have 80 companies all around the world involved in a lot of interaction, many companies in Japan and Europe, as well as here in the Silicon Valley and all around the country. And that interaction is creating all kind of new projects, new directions, pointing to the research and in fact promoting those directions of research through the funding and the support coming from industry.
Great, thank you. So the next question, which actually follows on to what Dr. Khatib was talking about, is written on my paper, is what will be possible when? Now, I think if we were actually trying to answer that question, we'd be here a long time. So I'd like to narrow it down, and I'd really like to narrow it down, though I see we have someone who's willing to answer that, what will be possible when. But I'd like to also put it in the context of, if we think of education, and we think of how universities teach things, and collaboration between universities and industry, sort of how will technology, what pieces of technology will allow us to go change how we teach and how students learn? So, go ahead.
So, I'm shocked at Stanford how backward a number of things are at the school. SCPD, for instance, the continuing professional development, no interaction there. On the other hand, I'm amazed how the students, when you give them the chance to actually innovate teaching, how well they do. I, like Dekai, I'm not using PowerPoints anymore. The students write the notes in a wiki. I've done that for 4 or 5 years now, and I go myself to the notes the students wrote if I want to refresh my memory about certain facts. So I think the innovation is coming from bottom up and not from the institution, as far as teaching goes. And I should say I only teach one class a year at Stanford, so I think it's probably a somewhat outside perspective I'm providing. The other point, of course, is that education will be revolutionized through the fast feedback loop device most of us carry with us, called the mobile phone. That, I think, learning happens if you get feedback fast, and we are not even seeing the beginning of the revolution of the mobile in education. What it means in the workplace in the larger scheme is, I think, an atomization, that people will do those tasks they're interested in, and they will do them well. And we have, more or less good matching algorithms that pair me up if I have a certain task with somebody who's willing to do that task.
So, Dr. Shen, you come from a company that sells a few mobile devices. How do you respond to that?
Okay, so being from Nokia, I wholeheartedly agree with what Andrea just said. This is going to be your main device. There are 5 billion mobile subscriptions worldwide, and only 1.2 billion PCs worldwide. So there are lots of people with this device all over the world, have never seen a PC. PC was invented here. We impose it on the rest of the world, thinking that keyboards are absolutely natural, but it's completely alien for a lot of people. But this device is being adopted in different ways. So this is really it. And Moore's Law will make sure that this will be as powerful as the PC we have today. But I want to make a couple other observations on education. I take a bottom-up inductive approach. I look at my 14-year-old daughter. She's a straight A student. I don't know how she does it. Well, actually, this is what she does. When she has a homework assignment, she doesn't know how to answer a question. She simply cut and paste that question and drop it into the Google search box. Really, this is how she does it. Amazingly, she gets the answer very quick. And if she doesn't get the answer then she puts it on her Facebook page. She's got over 150 friends. Usually within minutes, she gets the answer. So other than this mobile device, there's 2 other things. One is that learning or education is going to involve these rapid discovery of content in the cloud, as well as dynamic real-time learning through social networks and community collaboration. This is what teenagers are doing today. I mean, I was amazed the first time I walked in her room and she asked me a question saying, "Dad, do you know the answer to this question?" I said, "I have no idea." And she just cut, paste, drop into Google, boom, usually on the first page. she gets her answer. So this is sort of how, things are evolving.
Great. I'll let you decide whether or not that's evil. Right. But Dr. Cohen.
This is very important, I think, because I don't know that we'd call that learning. It's without question, that's what they do. All of our kids do it. I'm sorry, I didn't know the name of the first person who commented. I agree with them completely. The key here, the real game changer, is feedback. And the new technologies, including the Open Learning Initiative I referred to before at Carnegie Mellon, the real value of it is in the real-time assessment it provides on what the student is learning, both to the student and the big game changer, to the instructor. The feedback is the key. So if we're going to talk about learning as opposed to simply acquiring information.
Sorry, Dr. Singh, you haven't had a chance to speak tonight.
Yeah, I wanted to point out that a lot of the challenges that with the globalization of education the students are facing as a corporate environment, with a company which is present across 50 nations, we sort of, go through
A little closer to the mic. That would help.
So we, we sort of go through similar paradigms and similar challenges as well. And I think one of the key things is the immersiveness of the experience. So whether it's, telepresence or any video conferencing facility that really engages the audience, I think it lets you cut down on travel budget and stuff of that sort. Now, having said that, I don't think that's quite possible in an academic setting where students don't quite have the budget to, afford that kind of infrastructure. But we've seen, sort of innovation having, taught courses at Stanford as well. A lot of seminars are now put on YouTube, or, you have internal websites where students can just access it, whether or not they are enrolled in a particular course or not. So I think that outreach sort of lets us, sort of go to a broader set of community.
Let me just quickly add to that. I think the economics really plays the key role there. And for all of my classes, I create a transcript or have a transcript created, and everybody in the world, without logging in, can comment on that. And you just leverage by doing things which would have been super expensive before. You leverage basically the world to make your class better, and in that process, the world learns.
And I think another comment is that, this open innovation model that the industries and academic institutions are adhering to could sort of, expand to a more open education model where more and more lectures from the universities can be put out in the open. So even in it's an excellent example which CMU is doing by sort of, expanding the presence globally. But if these lectures are available openly and places where we cannot afford to have, places set up, still students and people who are interested can actually access all the know-how which is generated from academia.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'm going to give you a chance. I'm going to let you answer the next question because it's going to lead on from this question, which is, we just heard from Dr. Singh about how there's just a wealth of information both from industry and companies and from universities available on the web, and how that ought to lead to collaboration. And so what I'd like to make this question is an open-ended one as to how do we use some of the technologies that we've been talking about to go improve and increase collaboration both between universities and also between universities and industry.
I was just going to mention an experience at Stanford, which is the D School, the design school, which is going beyond the conventional way of education, thinking about new dimensions in the process of learning, and its social implication, its real connection with the society, and also the way we are delivering the knowledge and the experience itself for the students. It is a new experience that started a few years ago, and I think probably it brings one of the possible models for the future.
Dr. Namie, how about collaboration in Japan between either universities or universities and industry?
Okay. As a task, the key task of international joint collaboration, I would like to suggest the three factors. The first is the integration of worldwide intelligence. And the second is education for students in an international environment. And the third one is technical collaboration, including joint research and development, straightforward technology transfer, and university industry partnership. I suppose you are aware that all these tasks are difficult for individual or organization. They cannot be achieved without international joint collaboration. It's my opinion.
Thank you. Anyone else want to comment on collaboration before I open it up to the floor?
Well, I would just point out that that which brings us together today, Interact, is a wonderful example of international, interinstitutional collaboration, where many of the faculty involved in this have been able to do things that they could not have done or would not have done had it not been for the collaborative structures that have been created. It's a good
Great.
model.
Thank you. Okay, anyone from the audience have a question on globalization or technology in universities or collaboration? The general rule I have is if you don't ask questions then of the panel, then I start asking questions of you, or pick someone to go ask a question, like, you know, Jim Mitchell or someone who always has, all right, he's going to ask it. All right, Jim's going to volunteer to ask the first question. There's some mics in the back, or just talk loud.
I can just talk loudly, I think. One of the hardest things for companies working with universities has been who owns the IP that's generated, and what access does the company have to that for whatever they're contributing to the collaboration. Universities have gone from one side to the other about wanting to own everything, to being much more open, and I'm wondering how you all feel about that in terms of fostering collaboration with industry.
So the question, in case everyone didn't hear it, is how are universities dealing with intellectual property issues between the university and the companies they want to work with?
Okay, let me comment on it. This is so having spent 4 years at Nokia, prior to that 6 years at Intel, prior to that 17 years of faculty at Carnegie Mellon, I think this is really a critical key issue. We need to really rethink this whole model, because if you look at all the universities, what they have invested in terms of building their patenting department and this licensing return that they get, it's a net negative. It's a net negative, except for a few patents, you know, from Stanford and biotech area, and a handful of others, like the pasteurization patents from University of Wisconsin. Except for a handful of them, it's really a money-losing game. And I think we need to just really have some common sense here. And most companies are not trying to exploit this creative faculty members' ideas. They're actually, for big companies, it's a defensive thing. They just want to make sure that when they fund research, it doesn't lead to a patent that holds them hostage later. And so, you know, so we need to look at the big picture, look at the numbers, and let's find a new way where we can collaborate, where, yes, creative faculty member that comes up with a cool idea should somehow be compensated. But it's not through these, you know, litigation, because these big companies, they will pay off because they're in a lose-lose situation, because if they win the fight in court, they will be viewed as beating on this creative professor. And so I think this is a big topic that I think we need to really rethink, and there needs to be a new model in order to sustain this kind of open innovation we always like to talk about. But usually it's this one issue is frequently the stumbling block.
So this sounds like it needs a university response, because I think what I just heard was universities shouldn't be filing patents. So I'm wondering if...
No, he didn't say that.
Okay.
Let me try. Let me try to.
Go ahead, Dr. Sedini. Or,
no, okay.
Oh no.
Yeah, Osama.
Well, how about we'll let Jerry talk first, because we'll go university response first.
Go ahead.
Moderator's privilege here.
Please go ahead.
Of course, one can't generalize about all universities. Each institution is different, and no doubt some have pursued their approach to intellectual property with the idea of maximizing revenue in mind. And I know you probably won't believe this, but in fact, we are greatly constrained by federal law, both with regard to who owns the intellectual property and what kind of licensing arrangements we're allowed to give in advance. I agree with you completely that this is a problem. In fact, it's a national crisis, and it needs to be changed, but it's only going to be changed if the law gets changed. Until it does, we really are constrained about what we can do. And I can elaborate on that if you want, but I don't think you want me to. Go ahead.
All right, Dr. Khatib, did you want to make one?
Yes, I mean, I fully agree, and in fact, at Stanford, we are, moving in a direction where collaboration can bring about sharing intellectual properties. And this is within the framework of collaboration between academia and the industry. And there is a new office that is handling those kind of agreements. In fact, there are a lot of agreements that are made today between different groups, faculty and companies involving shared intellectual properties. The basic principle at Stanford University and many other universities was that you cannot buy intellectual property. So it's not by just funding a project we can acquire the intellectual properties. However, there are shared ideas and discussions that involve other partners in those projects, and that can be part of why we will be sharing the intellectual properties. So the development office at Stanford University is working on that.
Great.
So just a follow-up comment to that, so in my experience, I've seen a lot of diversity across Europe and US. So, Deutsche Telekom, we've invested in Germany in some universities and also in Israel. There, the IPR agreements are much more, in favor of the industry in the respect that you can gain back the IPRs. At Stanford, however, just like we discussed, there's a different paradigm. But what we've sort of figured out is that in a more open innovation model, there's a lot that the industry can gain, because usually the consortium, for our case, the consortiums that we founded, they comprise multiple industries. Whether these are vendors or service providers or hardware manufacturers, they all sort of pool in their intellect and know-how. And although we've invested in an open innovation model, that lets us sort of harness, which was much more than what was initially invested in. So we've sort of, tried to figure out ways of working around the things.
Dr. Hilter.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference, particularly between the US and Europe and Germany. And also I think there's a difference between private university and public universities. And for us in Germany, mostly public universities, I think our mission is to transfer money into knowledge. And the mission of industry is to transfer knowledge into money. And this interface is the most important interface, and how to deal with this interface depends on the laws you have in your states or in your countries. And therefore, the situation is very, very different in the world, and it's not easy to handle. So for my university, the laws enforce us to do this and to have this own service unit for dealing with intellectual properties and patents and licenses. But for us, it's really, really a red number. There's nothing coming out. And it takes for ages. And if you have a cash cow, this is very, very rare. And the question is whether it's worthwhile to have your efforts in this as a public university to do so. I think it's not. And there are better ways to deal with industry. And I think what's very, very important is a kind of confidence between industry and a university, how to deal with these kind of things. And then in the future, this may develop much, much better than having certain rules.
Great, thank you. All right, more questions from the audience.
I have a simple question. How do you see the effect of sites like Wikipedia on the quality of information that's out there, on the quality of information that people trust?
Okay, so the question was, how do you see sites like Wikipedia on the quality of information and the information people trust, and apparently the answers your students give to tests? Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm surprised that people emphasize information again and again here. I think universities are not about transmitting information, at least not now. You can find that. Universities are about helping people ask the right questions. Universities are about helping people make the right decisions, understanding trade-offs in these decisions. Yes, we do need data, we need information for that. But, so that's my perspective, that maybe we should rethink, as we all have Wikipedia at our fingertips, what it is that we actually should be doing. You mentioned mission statements a couple of times before. Actually, I'm not familiar with them. But I think it might be time to reflect in this very different world in terms of globalization, in terms of technology, to think what we should be giving our students.
So, anyone else want to answer that?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it is not about the answer. I really don't care that the answer is right. I really want to see the process of thinking, the ability to come up with new questions and answer other new problems independently. And that process is not going to be just learned by finding the answer somewhere. So this is very important in education, and that process is very important.
Dr. Hall, do you want to?
Yeah. So part of what we teach our students is how to discriminate between authentic and valid information versus something that might be biased or something might be fabricated or just not true. And a traditional way that we operate within universities is the peer review process. So essentially, you find experts review it, they say whether it's good or bad, they provide comments, and that leads to something that, in a way, is certified as authentic. Wikipedia doesn't exactly work that way, but it is created within a community, and it does have a way of validation associated with it because people have opportunity to make changes to it and corrections and comments and so forth. I think we're evolving to a different world where what is valid and not valid is determined by different means than in the past. And I think that does make it a new challenge for the students as well as the faculty, is how to discriminate. And in many cases, Wikipedia is more accurate than things that may be validated through peer review processes. And we have to figure out in the future how to do that.
Okay, one last question. Martin, do you have a question?
Yeah, well, when we had this discussion, I'm reminded of the transition from taking closed book exams to open book exams, how you had to change questions you would ask. Now we have an accelerated ability to find all this information. So the challenge for differently and to mature to grow is how to ask projects and problems that cause you to have to invent things, synthesize information, select between different pieces.
Right.
Build a card that has an app that weighs 3 ounces or something like that. And then they can figure out as much as they like on it. It won't give you the answers to the credit.
So I think the question is basically, with all this information available out on the internet, how do we improve how we teach? How do we get students to ask better questions? Dr. Sedini, would you like to?
Well, it is. I think it is. I think it's really a big problem in some sense because we need to change the way we evaluate students. And in some sense we need to change ways. We evaluate ourselves as teachers, I personally don't have an answer to this. It's the only thing that I can say is that we have to go away from teaching from a desk, and move toward doing research together or doing activities together. So again, is the issue of investing our time in activities which really requires our intervention, leaving aside all the activities that can be, all the teaching that can be taught by question and answer. In that respect, I work on robotics, and in that respect, I think robots are really very, very interesting teaching tools, because you can teach using robots. You can teach a lot of different disciplines with hands-on, and you can go in depth into that.
Okay, it's getting late, so what we're going to do is thank you very much to the panelists.